Yeah, wasn't that great listening to the kids sing? And just a amazing bunch of kids. And it is great to be here at this conference. Thank you, Pastor Chandra, for your leadership and Transformation Church. Many of you have labored hard behind bringing the church together, and friends and others from neighboring states, and some have driven far away from far places and really commend the effort. And your emphasis on the next generation, your vision for building into your kids and youths and as a church. It's a very commendable vision, and it really stand by you. And just one reason I just wanted to come and cheer you on. And as you build your churches, invest in the next generation and lead them to the Lord. And I think that's the greatest thing that we can do as a church. And it was really a blessing to be here and just see, come out here to Delaware and see. I used to be in Philadelphia, so I used to go back and forth to DC, Philly, New Jersey, New York. And it's always good to come back to this part of the country. And I really enjoyed Brother Sudhakar, your teaching. Wonderful. Never looked at Psalm 45 that way. You know, I mean, it's amazing. Gifted man and amazing teaching of the word. We need to sit under the teaching and learn what Scripture has to teach. And thank you, brother, for your teaching and your ministry, your faithful years. After 25 years, I'm listening to him. Just blessed. Thank you so much for your passion for the word and your ability to teach and bring and tie all that together. Just bless my heart yesterday and today, and thank you. And again, Dr. Michael, for teaming up and just hanging out with you. It's been a joy listening to your story, and you really blessed our Indian community by sharing your life. And you had many Indian friends in Saudi Arabia. You can be assured that in America you have lots of Indian friends. We'll cheer you on. Thank you for your ministry. And, you know, I mean, you get involved in Africa. I mean, they just love us Indians. I've crisscrossed Africa in the last few years. There is a special fascination and connection with Africans. And I just love that about Africa. I hope some of you will go to Africa. Church is thriving and exploding in Africa. Get involved in some of those parts. It's also lots of needs. Go to Ethiopia and Kenya and Uganda and Sudan, the country, youngest country, so much of crisis and pain. And we can get involved. And so this evening I want to kind of share about, kind of as a family level, generation level, but I also want to stretch for Transformation Church. What does it mean for us to get involved in the mission of God? Church will be fully alive when a church is involved in the mission, God's mission. And God is moving around the world. There's so much happening in the world. And don't just listen to somebody who will come and give a report. Wonderful things that are happening. You go see for yourself. God is moving and working and stirring. And talking about the Middle East and what's happening. Iran, there is a revolution, young people. So many millions are turning to Christ. I couldn't go in and out, but I went and connecting with the Iranian leaders in many places, what we call as the Iranian diaspora. So many who have come to Turkey and other places. They suffered a lot, persecuted a lot, but the ardent faith of these people will inspire you and challenge you. And so that's why as a church, you need to be involved and get out there. The days of receiving is over. It's the time of giving. Diaspora churches has to give our time and our resources and serve the global church. Cross-culturally get involved in other communities. Learn to love other communities. Take our young people on mission and go out as a team, as a church, as a groups. When we start, many immigrant churches becomes inward looking. We tend to turn inward. Because that's what this world, Monday through Friday, Saturday, in the world, in the American world, sometimes we don't find our place. So Sunday becomes all about ourselves, meeting our needs. Pastor exists to serve me. Rest of the Sunday school has to serve my kids. Everything is about consuming it. I become the center. I want to be receiving it. You don't experience church. You don't experience community. You don't understand what does it mean to be a follower of Christ. You have to get out there and serve other people without expecting anything in return. There is something about Christian faith you'll understand only when you give it away. When you see other people, lives transform as a result of the gospel, then that deepens my own conviction about this gospel. You must give it away. If you hold on to it, you don't understand Christianity. Pass it on to others. Share people with other people and your workplaces. So I often say, immigrants, your primary identity as a missionary. You are a missionary here in America. Software job did not bring you here. You did not come to study here. Your marriage did not bring you here. You are a missionary with God. In the olden days, missionaries were, they went from one place to another place. William Carey came to India from England. He was a missionary, right? So you go from one place to another place. So we call as missionaries were migrants. They migrated from one place to another place where their God called them. Now we say migrants are missionaries. You and I have been brought to this country in order to bless this land and all others who come to this land. You and I are missionaries, our primary identity. It so happened, I also happen to have a job on the side. Incidental. That is something to pay my mortgage, put gas in my car. But your primary vocation and your calling and your commitment is to be a follower of Christ and live out this faith where God has placed you. So when we see ourselves, all of us as missionaries, church is comprised of missionaries. So this idea that when you come together, worship on a Sunday morning, and then you go out into the world. So these are two major ideas in the Bible that we talk about as scattering, the diaspora. The word for scattering in the Bible is diaspora, dispersion. It's like sowing of the seed. A farmer will go out and sow seeds, and you're scattering the seeds in the soil. The opposite idea in the Bible is the gathering, ingathering, or the gathering. Gathering, the Greek word is ekklesia, the church. Church is a gathered one. But God gathers in order to scatter. And the scattered one, He gathers. So these are two ideas that is going all across the Bible. Adam and Eve, expulsion from the garden, that is a scattering. Calling of Abraham, leave your land and your people, I will take you to a new place. Bible is full of people who are on the move and migrants. And then we see migration as a major theme in the Bible. Look at Daniel, the Joseph, the migration all over. So we understand our own story in this biblical narrative, the grand idea, God moves people. And in our story, in our times now, God has moved you from Hyderabad and Vizag to come and live in Delaware and Virginia, and Philadelphia and New Jersey and North Carolina, wherever you come from. We need to find our story and our life story in this grand movement of people. Why does God move people? In order to advance His kingdom. Every time moving people move things, and the kingdom advances. So the American history, America is a land of immigrants. And most people who come to America are Christians. But they come from different shores of the world. Christianity today is more global. It's there in every nook and corner of the globe. So in 2010, the Congress of the Lausanne met in Cape Town. They say it was a historic gathering. Never in the human history there were Christians from so many countries under one roof. It was amazing. Every country of the world, they were Christians. We were under one roof and worshiping the Lord. It was literally the feeling of this is what heaven is going to be. People from every country. First time since the Great Commission and the ascension of Christ this has happened. So in every country there is a church today. So when you stand in church Sunday morning worship, recognize that you're not the only one. All kinds of languages and dialects and styles and worship formats, worship is going on. We must have that sense of solidarity with the global church. Now the church is thriving in the global south. When we say global south, is Africa, Latin America, and Asia. That's where much action is happening. Not here in America, sadly. I go to some other places and come back, there's so much more exciting things happening out there in the world. 1900, when last century began, 1900, almost 80% of the Christians were living in the global north, what is often called as the Europe, North America, and Australia. By 2010, it is the other way around. Only 20% is left in our global north. 80% of the Christians were in the global south. And they say by 2020, which is next year, the projection is almost 90% of the Christians of the world are in the global south. Most of the Christians are in the global south. So this great reversal that happened in our generation. So Christianity always moved around. First century, it was, Middle East was still part of Asia. And then we begin to see, till all the way till 500 or so, much of the Christians were in North Africa, Middle East, and parts of Asia and India particularly. Till 500 or so. 498 to be precise. And then the second 500 years, Christianity began to move westward, and Europe becomes a major center for Christianity. And then by 1500, 1600, the Reformation began to happen. Christianity began to move again. 16th century, when Reformation happened, most of the Christians were in Europe. Reformation brought about a great revival and sending people all over the world. So Europeans started spreading all over the world. They started drawing. Colonialism, trade, civilization, whatever you call, they started moving about everywhere in the world. And wherever they went, they established the churches. So Church of England in Africa and Nigeria, or Methodism that spread everywhere, or French and Swedish and German Lutherans, they all started going everywhere. So for the first 500 years or so, Christianity was largely North African and Middle Eastern. The second half, Christianity looked more European. The third 500 years or so, the European Christianity went all over the world. So for example, in Andhra Pradesh, the Lutheran Church, or the Brethren movement, or the Pentecostal wave that came in the late 20th century. All of that were waves of influence that has come from other places, and it began to shape the Christianity in India and other places. And now European Christianity is declining. Some of the churches are closing down. Churches have been turned into pubs and bookstores and coffee shops and prostitution centers in England and France and Denmark. Christianity is thriving in the global south now. Africa, sub-Saharan Africa itself has some 600 million Christians. China has around 250 million Christians. Fastest growth of Christianity right now in the world is in China. 1949, when communism took over in China, there were 50,000 Christians in China. 1949, then 1979 was the Cultural Revolution, and now 2019, just in 70 years, from 50,000 to 250 million Christians. You go worship in the underground church in China, you will never be the same kind of Christian anymore. I can tell you story after story just inspires you. Willingness to suffer, their conviction is so deep. What does it mean? Maybe I'll tell you one story. So I was in China. I lived in Hong Kong and I had lots of connection with China and still involved. I'm targeted now for being in China. I had trouble last time when I was trying to enter in there. So not on the mic, no just, put on the Facebook or anything like that. So I was kind of, got into the country. I was staying with this pastor, local Chinese underground church pastor. Sunday morning, we're going to the church. So he said, you're not coming with me to church. So I thought, you asked me to preach. I'm supposed to be the, Sunday morning preacher of the church. And then he says that uh, he had a very broken English. So this, I don't know how many, exactly the words that he used. He said that, I will go to church, you cannot come with me. So then I said, how do I get to the church? I don't know where the church is. And then he says, somebody will come from the church. Uh, 2 years ago, one of the turning points was this journey that I took to Germany. And it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a weekend like this, retreat center. And it's up in the hills. It's a beautiful northern city in Germany. And so the pastor and a few other people come to the airport, and we kind of already kind of rushing to the church. And we go to the church, the retreat center. There are around 200 refugees. Most of them, 190 of them are Muslim background. First time ever they're coming to a Christian event. So we had got an Arabic worship leader, and we had some evangelists, and we want to share the gospel, and have invited all of them and bus them. We had many buses running and bringing them there. So as soon as we got in, worship was beginning there, and I see this worship leader with Oud. Oud is a Middle Eastern guitar. It's a 12-string, beautiful instrument, just sounds so wonderful. So he gets up there and starts strumming this Arabic music, and starts singing, and then suddenly I see this kid running to the front, and he's in the front. here. He has his hands raised and is singing his heart loud. He's the loudest in this whole crowd. 2-3 minutes later, he starts sobbing and wailing and crying. And then he'll collect himself, and then again he'll start singing. So myself and two other pastors, we are sitting at the back there, and so I'm thinking, who is this guy? Why is he really disrupting the worship? He's not singing properly. All those kind of things. My critical, attitude and my heart was not in the right place. And then I'm thinking, okay, what has he gone through? Why is he crying so much? Because I heard horrific stories in the last 2 years of what these refugees have gone through. I went and lived in a refugee camp and shared the gospel and heard their stories, and it was so much that it was beginning to affect me. I think in the last 2 years, I've seen more bullet-torn bodies, bullet wounds and torn apart bodies, and fingers are chopped off and hands are cut off. ISIS is brutal. Firsthand, I saw the brutality of what ISIS is doing to fellow human beings. It's just painful, painful. I remember one trip I came back, just night, middle of the night, I went to sleep, and just middle of the night, I'm hearing gunshots. And I woke up and fully drenched in my sweat. And I didn't want to wake up my wife or do anything and tell anybody, and I'm just really concerned, and I can't sleep. I stayed up and then went and drank something and just wanted to go and hit the bed again. I thought it's just one-off incident and it might go off. 2 days later, again, same thing. Wake up middle of the night and just completely sweating. I'm hearing all these kind of sound and wailing, and people are running and gunshots and bombs going off. Then I felt that I need to talk to somebody about this. And Parivar, I called the Parivar's director in New York and talked to him. He's a trauma specialist. And he said, Sam, this is early signs of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. You've been exposing yourself too much into these realities. You must go into therapy and counseling. Otherwise, this is going to affect you. Because I was not only just getting involved with them and serving them and just passion and driving there, it was beginning to affect me and my own psychological well-being. So I canceled my trip and went into counseling and therapy. I was kind of So some of this is very, very difficult. I don't take young people, anybody before college, I don't even take them. Because exposing yourself to these kind of harsh realities is very painful for your own kind of well-being. So this trip, I've heard a lot of these crazy stories. So I'm wondering what this boy has gone through. Why is he crying so much? Why is he singing the loudest? Why is he just who is he? And then the message, and first night, Friday night message, and after the message, there were some 60, 70 people receiving Christ. First time. And so the pastor calls me up and come and pray for all the people, and we're laying hands and praying for them. And suddenly I see this blue shirt boy standing in front of me. He's the boy who was wailing and crying. I saw from the back. And I said, okay, this boy. Now, what do I pray for him? What has he gone through? And I just kind of wanting to pray something meaningful for him. And then I didn't know. Spirit led me, and I just prayed for him. And then he just wanted to hug me. These Middle Eastern people are very huggy people. So, he's like my son, young boy, and he just hugged me. And when he hugged me, I suddenly realized his T-shirt is soaked with tears, as if his entire T-shirt is like dipped in the water. All this time he's been crying, and there's so much of tears on his T-shirt. I kind of had that wet embrace. Then I realized, man, this kid has been crying all this time. That just had a profound impact on me. So I kind of finished and kind of walked out, and 8 o'clock, we are all walking to the other hall for dinner. And as it's going, I see a tap on my shoulder. And I turn around as this boy. And then he started talking in Arabic. And so I called my translator and said, what's he asking? He's saying that he's asking whether he can sit with you for dinner. I said, oh, sure, please come. Come sit with me for dinner and tell me, who you are, what you are, and why you are crying. I wanted to kind of find out his story. And he comes and sits in front of me and then tells his story. He's from the city of Aleppo in Syria. ISIS came into his home, shot his father, his uncle, 3 of his brothers, and 2 other family friends. Boom, 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 boom. Shot in front of him. His 2 sisters were spared. He was spared. His mother and his aunt were spared. But he was 16 years old boy, saw his family getting wiped out in front of him. They did not kill him. They took him and put him in the jeep and drove away. They took him to a nearby village. Asked him, here is his gun, assault rifle, automatic assault rifle. They gave him a T-shirt, which is the ISIS T-shirt, the black with Arabic letters. Gave him a T-shirt. Now you belong to us. You will do what we ask you to do. Take this gun and kill people in that village. That kid said, I won't touch this, because I know what this does to people. It kills so many of my family members. I will not touch this. And then he says, they beat him up real bad. He pulls up his shirt and shows all the injuries on his back, beaten up with a gun. With all that injuries, they left him, and a week later, once again they come. It's like the induction into gangs. It's kind of really breaking the will, and so take him to another village. And here's the gun, shoot. He refuses to shoot. This goes on for several weeks. And finally, he's at the point that I don't think I can survive this. I'm going to run away. He finds one other boy from the same village and goes and tells him that I want to run away. This other boy, he's only 20 years old. His advice was, don't try to escape from here. This whole area is infested with ISIS. You will get caught, and anybody who's caught is killed instantly. You won't be able to escape from here. And then finally, he wrestling with this idea. If I stay here, they're going to kill me. If I run away, they're going to kill me. What am I going to do? Remember, he's only a 16-year-old boy. And just still reeling under the few months ago, his parents, everybody was killed in front of him. All the trauma and the pain. Then finally, he decides that I'm going to run away. And this is what he does. He said, when the sun goes down, when it gets dark, I'm going to run. I'm going to take this highway that goes towards Turkey. And I'm going to run all night. And in the cover of the darkness, I want to escape and go into Turkey. That's exactly what he did. 3 nights, consecutive nights, ran on a bare feet in the desert sand. Early morning, when the sun broke the first night, he was exhausted. He went to a nearby village, begged for food, drank some water, and slept under a bush, waiting for the darkness to come again, so that he can run again. Second night, he ran whole day. Daytime, again rested. Third night, this is how he said, sometime past midnight, Arabic, probably Dr. Michael will know. It was just beautiful. This kid is just so poetic and lovely the way he tells the story. Sometime past midnight, he looks at the stars and tells the time. My feet could not carry me any longer. I collapsed and fell in the sand. And he was lying in the sand, no energy to run and get up and walk. An ISIS truck comes that way. Middle of the night, they want to stop and put a fire, cook something and eat. They pick up women from the nearby village and rape them, and all kinds of crazy stuff goes on. And so this guy is completely subconscious, about, have no awareness of what is happening. But he hears these guys, 2 fellows talking, go get some firewood. So the other soldier, terrorist, they goes and kind of looking around for firewood in the desert. And this guy runs into this guy's body, lying there. And so this guy is telling the other terrorist, saying that there's somebody here. And he says he's alive or dead. I think he's dead. And so he kind of pokes him with a gun. It's a loaded gun. He could have just pulled a trigger and he would have been killed. And pokes him with the gun and he's saying, I think he's dead. Okay, then let's go. And the other guy calls him and he pulls away, and their truck is about to leave. And before he leaves, what he does is he puts sand and buried him under the sand. So he's lying under the sand. Middle of the night, probably going to die. And as he stood there, Jesus comes and appears before him. The whole place is lit like a noonday sun. That's how he explains. Jesus stands, friends, in front of him. I just stop. Tell me, how do you know that is Isa? He calls him Isa. He says, I saw the nail-pierced hand. That is Nabi Isa. That's how he explains. And he said, what did Isa tell you? And he said, he told me 4 things. You're not going to die here. I will take you to a new place. I want you to be a part of my people. And I want you to read my book. 4 things. Clearly remembers what Jesus told him. With this encounter, he was there just soaking in the presence of God. And Jesus standing in front of him with outstretched hands. And as Jesus disappears, he's saying, I jumped out of my grave, sandy grave. And then I started running. I had this new energy. And by the sunrise that morning, he was in the Turkey's border. I said, okay, come again. I know the geography there. I pulled up my map, Google map, and tried to look at it. In an hour or so, he traveled some 360 miles. I don't know how, no way to explain. He was just picked up from here and dropped at the border. That's the only explanation I can give you. Early morning, he goes into a refugee camp. With the road that he was going, does not even go to the refugee camp. It has another highway that he has to take. So for any practical, logical sense, he wouldn't have landed up where he landed up. It's a United Nations refugee camp. And I went to in Turkey, and I went to the United Nations refugee camp. I met the guy who had enrolled him into the camp. Early morning, 5:30 in the morning, barely, any sunlight. This guy is at the door. Please take me in. They are trying to kill me. Who? ISIS. This guy is wearing ISIS t-shirt. They're trying to kill me. Please take me in. And so who are you? And whatever it is, they take me in. Take him in. And so that he's like a very senior United Nations guy. And he says that this kid is an amazing kid. I have, in my 16-some years of refugee work, I never met a kid like this. His just attitude towards life is so different. In spite of all that he has endured and gone through, he was helping everybody, serving people, just giving himself out. And that's why he found joy in the refugee camp. So before the end of the month, he had to give a report for all the people who came in. This guy gave a glowing report about this boy. Exceptional report about his character and his commitment and time and everything else. Guess what? Within the 2 days later, Germany picks him up and takes him to Germany on an exemplary character recommendation from the highest United Nations office. So he lands up in Germany. On the first Sunday, he lands up at my friend's church. Sunday morning, before the sunbreak, he's waiting at the church. My pastor friend, German guy, who pulls up into the driving lot, and he sees one guy sitting in the front of the door. And he came there early to prepare for the communion service. That day was a communion Sunday. And say, who is this guy? Some refugee waiting there at the door. And he said, who are you? Why are you here? He said, I'm looking for the father of the church. The pastor. So he said, I'm the pastor. I'm the pastor here. What do you want? Who are you? And so he said, Pastor, Father, you baptize me now. This is how he talks. So he wants to take baptism. So he said, why do you want to take baptism? Isa told me. You talk to me anything, Isa told him. Amazing kid. And so he said, Isa told me. He said, what did Isa told him? Be part of my people. He wants to go to church. So he thinks that he can go into the church only if he takes baptism. Only baptism people are going into the church. And so that's the Middle Eastern understanding of a young boy. And he wants to take baptism. So pastor says, morning is our German service, but evening we have an Arabic service. So if you want to come for the Arabic service, please come. And then we will see, we'll give you baptism. It's a good pastor. He's kind of checking, whether he has his faith and all that. And so he said, why you want to take baptism? Why you want to come to church? Isa told me. So he takes a baptism. I was there at his baptism. So we gave him a Bible. This was his first Arabic Bible. And this kid, remember, Isa told him, read my book. And he gets into the reading of the word. And so I went back, when was it, last November? I was in Germany. I just wanted to go and see this boy. He's like my son, I mean, just same age, and he's around 17, 18 now. But I just wanted to go see this boy. And so I called the pastor, saying, how is he doing? And he said, oh, started complaining about the boy. So I thought there was something really wrong. Okay, Pastor, what's wrong? What's wrong with him? Tell me, does he need any counseling? I know a psychologist in the town, I can get some help, and he need to go some help, and, I'm just really concerned, like a father, He said, no, my problem, okay, well, what's the problem? I'm just really perturbed with all this, pastor is complaining about this boy, new convert in the church. Then he says, my only problem is he's reading Bible all the time. I said, Pastor, what's wrong with that? Isn't that what we tell new believers? Read Bible, pray. Then he says, I think he's doing a little too much. So I said, what is too much? Oh, he gets up around 5:30 in the morning, whole day, till 9, 10 o'clock in the night, he's reading the Bible. His typical routine is this. 2 days he goes to school. He has to learn German. He goes to German school. The other days when he's at home, he opens the Bible, gets on his knees, and reads the Bible for 10, 15 hours a day. And cries. This kid cries a lot. His Bible is soaked in tears. The Bible that we gave him after his baptism, which was this thick, now it's around this thick. Soaked with tears. Tear-soaked, heart-wrenching stories and life with him. Some of half the New Testament in his memory now. 18-year-old kid. His first Bible. His love for Jesus. That intimacy that he has with Jesus is unbelievable. He knows Jesus so intimately. He talks. So, it was a December time in German markets. Christmas is a big celebration in Germany. And so I was living in a German family's house. Right across the house was a bakery. The German baked food is amazing. Christmas time especially. So every evening I'll go to the bakery and, kind of pick up some food, just keep it with me, the snack. And so I walk into the bakery. He starts talking to me in German, English mix, and says, are you new in town? I said, oh, down there, that church. I'm kind of a visitor to that church. And he turns around and says, that church? Muhammad church? That boy, Muhammad's church? Everybody in the town knows. Every store, every police officer, every store, everybody. And this is what he does. He goes and says, do you know my Isa? This is how he introduces Jesus to people. And the way he says this, you should see the emphasis. My Isa. That special endearing term and connection that he has with Jesus. I come back home. I have 2 teenagers at home. So my wife and I, for the last 2 years, one of the projects is read Bible for 15 minutes every day. 15 minutes seems to be such a chore. So our rule was no breakfast, no phone before you read the Bible in the morning, before you run out of the school. We are trying to inculcate the habit of reading the Bible in the morning for themselves. For them, it's what? Dad, done. Where is my phone? Where is my iPad? Nobody tells this boy he's living all by himself and he reads the Bible for 15, not minutes, hours a day. If you know Jesus, you would love this book. You would share with other people. Evangelism is not a technique, a method, a material that you distribute. If you have intimacy with Jesus, you will share this Jesus with other people. Our lack of intimacy is a results in lack of evangelism and passion for the lost souls. You must know new believers. Their passion for Jesus will ignite a fire in you. It's not how many years you have been a Christian. Your intimacy with Jesus. Marriage, I often say, it is not how many anniversaries that you celebrated. How many years you've been married does not translate into a great marriage. It is the intimacy with your life partner, with your husband or with your wife. That relates how much of work that you put into the marriage. That's what creates that intimacy. Same thing with evangelism and for knowing Jesus. If you intimately know Jesus, you will be committed to his book. You will be committed to other people. You will be involved in other people's life. You must go and serve other people. That's what the great African theologian who said that if you belong to Jesus, you belong to everyone who belongs to Jesus, across nations and race and language and culture. You must love other people and serve other people. You must go beyond your own communities. That's why God brought you to America. If you just want to be, with a group of Telugus and worship in Telugu only, God could have kept you in Andhra Pradesh. Why did He bring you to America? So that He'll expose you to Hispanics and Latinos and Africans and Chinese and the Koreans. We have much to learn from them, and we have to serve them too. There are certain things that you can contribute to the American Christianity. Every wave of immigrants who have come to America has shaped American Christianity. It was the Germans, and it was the English, and it was the Scottish, and who came and helped shape the 19th century Christianity. Then in the 20th century, we see other migrant communities coming. There was a time when Chinese and then they closed the door for Chinese and Asian Exclusion Act. Then we see Hispanics and Latin Americans coming to America, and that changed Christianity's dominant language into Spanish. And English and Spanish becomes the two major languages of the 20th century in America. Now, in the end of 20th century, maybe after 70s and 80s, is the Asian wave that is coming in. So many Koreans and Chinese are come. In Korea, something like 1/3 of Christians are Koreans are Christians in Korea. But in America, almost 85% of Koreans in America are Christians. There are 6,000 Korean churches in America, all in the last 30 years. And 40 years maybe. So many Chinese churches in America. You must build friendship. You build friendship with Chinese Christians here and see what is happening in China. It'll ignite a fire under your church, because you'll understand what does it mean, what God is doing in the world. That's why we need to be involved in missions. And I would challenge you as a church, your generational capacity, impact on the communities that you live in Delaware and this part of the country. You must catch a vision for the church around the world. And you must come alongside and serve and love and care for people. And build intercultural competency. Ability to love and relate to people who are unlike you. That's an essential life skill for the next generation. If you live in this little bubble, the silo mentality, I'm looking for a church that'll be inward looking, that'll maybe my social, cultural needs will meet. I call them as a club. You're not a church. It's a social club. Are you signing up for a membership in a social club that will meet your social needs? Or are you the church? If you are a church of Jesus Christ, you belong to the church of Jesus Christ around the world, from every country of the world. And you must love them and serve those people, because you and I have been entrusted much, given much. We've been given education. We are given skills. American economy needed us. We came here and contributed. But that's also to the kingdom thinking. Is what they call us. Immigrants are not de-Christianizing America, they're de-Europeanizing American Christianity. For much of the 20th century, American Christianity was shaped by European Christianity. Now Latin America and Asia and African immigrants are coming. In New York City, some of the thriving churches are all African churches. In Europe, some of the vibrant churches are all African. The largest church in London, largest church in Birmingham and Manchester and Paris and Berlin and Ukraine, and all of them are African-led. Once upon a time, English sent missionaries to Nigeria. Now Nigerians are sending tons of missionaries back to England. Ghana, so many Ghanaian churches in Europe. I have a friend in London. He's from southern Nigeria. So he is a medical doctor. FRCS, he's got some 20 letters after his name. I don't know what all those letters mean. A brilliant doctor, surgeon. He comes for some advanced training in England and to study in London, some of the great royal hospitals there. And he comes there to study, and Sunday morning he's trying to look for a church because he's grown up in the church culture, strong believer. So he's looking for a church and couldn't find any church. He finds a large cathedral and walks into the church, and it's all empty. Nobody there on a Sunday morning for a church service. And so he was just really concerned. And then he just gathered some people and started a church in front of they wouldn't let him inside the church, in the sanctuary. So in the outside, in the open area, he started a church there. Now he's one of the largest churches in England. He's left his medical practice, and he's a pastor now of the church. And then he tells that, so he tells the English people, it's not just the Africans who are there, all English people are in the church. And this is what he says: your forefathers sent a missionary to my tribal village. My chief, his grandfather was a chief of the village. And they translated the Bible into their language. Your forefathers sent a missionary who came and lived among us, shared this Jesus with us. He translated this book and gave it to our people. My entire village has become Christians now. 2 generations later, I come to England, and none of you are going to church. I'm obligated to return the favor that your forefathers paid to my forefathers. I had to preach this book to you and introduce this Jesus to you. And he shares the gospel. And thousands of them have turned to Christ. English people. See how it happens over 2 generations? Your story does not end with you. God brought you to America, maybe because God wants to do something through your children's life who are yet to be born. We must see many generations. We must look at life far beyond myself. Only then we'll understand the story of migration. Why God brought you to America? Because God wants to do something far beyond your lifetime and my lifetime. Paul, God raised in Tarsus. He changed Christianity. Moses grew up in Egypt in the abundance, and he was being prepared for the throne, and the finest education that he got, he laid all aside for 40 years of training in the wilderness. God prepared him for a new assignment in life when he was 80 years old. Don't think you're too old. Don't think you're too smart. All of your education does not matter for the kingdom. God wants to do a new training for you. That'll be in the desert, in the wanderings, and in the wilderness. God prepares the heart and the soul in order for a new mission that he has. At 80, that man starts his mission, delivering his own people, becoming the symbol of a deliverer, what Jesus was going to be in the New Testament. Understand the story. It takes 3 generations or so. I was in Durban, South Africa. Handful of Indians came to Durban some 180 years ago. Handful of Christians among all the indentured laborers that was brought to work in the sugarcane factories. Now almost 60% of Indians are Christians. Over 2 generations. This is the 3rd, 4th generation now. So many. Some 500-600 churches are led by Indians. Some of the largest churches in Durban are all led by Indians now. So many of Indians who are converted to Christ. The temples that are going up, don't be concerned about those Hindus who are here. 80% of Indians are Hindus, 75% or so. Non-Christians. But if you and I will live this gospel, make Jesus attractive beyond what they have been exposed in India. And that's why God brought you and me here. They're closer to the gospel here than back in India. We must engage in missions locally and around the world. These Hindus and the Jains and the Sikhs must experience the gospel and the claims of Christ for themselves. And you and I are the agents. That's why God brought so many Indians here. God brought you and I as believers to America, that we must engage. Not just fellow Indians. Let's reach out to others, Latin Americans who are here, the Africans who are here, African Americans who are here. Let's reach out to the Caucasians. You are a missionary in America. You must reach everybody who are here in America. Because that's the liberative identity. I am on mission with God. This is God's mission. I am on mission with God in this place that you're placed. Because Paul's sermon in Athens, remember, Acts 17, verse 26, is a God who determines the time and the place where you should live. You did not choose to come to Delaware or Philadelphia or Virginia. God has placed you there. And if God has placed you there, God also has a purpose. The Areopagus address in Acts 17:26. God finds the time and the place. In the early 20th century, 2019 and 2020, you should be living in Delaware. I think Pastor Chandra was saying, I didn't choose to come to Delaware. God seems to have orchestrated a certain thing that he be in Delaware and give leadership to a church here. God has brought each one of you and placed you in a place, wherever you are, with the purpose. And that purpose that you'll find in the mission of God, that you are a missionary. On the side, I have a bank, a job for doing some coding for a bank, or some federal job, or whatever, corporate companies that you work for. That's just incidental on the side. Your primary identity is you're called of God, you're his child, and you're on a mission with him and where God has placed you.